Thank you.
But you're seeing this.
Okay.
And they hear.
Is he doing a lavalier?
Oh, I just gave it. We have a couple. We did get a call that Commissioner was coming, so. Wait for a couple minutes.
Sure.
It's just 6:30. So, oh, did you get a program? Yeah. Okay, so after you do, then I'll do a time and then I'll start introducing you. Are you going to stay for that?
Probably.
Any of your crew coming?
I think I should start. Even if I talk longer.
So we'll try to stay on schedule tonight. And I want to thank you all for coming out here and visiting with us. And we really have a terrific panel tonight that we all should be learning about this important topic. I have a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old, so this topic is very near and dear to me as I see, what goes on for adolescents and this world of cyber world and all the other fast technology that we as parents can probably are about 5 steps behind, and my kids probably are happy that I'm 5 steps behind. But it's some of the issues we all grew up with. The new technology just adds a new speed to and a new level of impact in the world potentially. Once something goes viral and is on the internet, on YouTube or Facebook or whatever format things go out. So hopefully you all saw our newsletter that's out on the table when you came in. Feel free to pick up a copy. We'll make sure they're available for you. We are having a number of different Be Mentally Well series, and we really look for your input on the next topic. So we're collecting people's emails, and we'll try to follow up with giving you more information if that's a format you're okay with getting. Otherwise, we also have a website where in this material, it shows you, so you could look on there if you'd prefer that to be the mechanism of how you learn about the different things we have. In addition to the Be Mentally Well series that we have here, we also have a Grand Rounds, is the name of the term that we use for, it's open to the public, although it tends to be a little bit more clinically focused in presentation, and that happens every Thursday at noon. And people from all over the country, even world, will come and present on a range of topics that relate to mental health, wellness, or addiction. So our Department of Psychiatry, we are part of UMass Memorial Healthcare, and we're also part of UMass Medical School. And we have 300 faculty and 2,000 staff, and we're all over central Massachusetts with clinical services, research, teaching activities, training programs, linkages with the community. So this is an important part of our commitment to the community to connect and bring the topics that you've asked us for. And this was one that we got a lot of interest in talking about. I want to thank Laura Meyer, who's in the front row, who's always humble about all of the work that she does behind the scene. She's also, in addition to putting together programs like this, she's working with parents in the community whose children, adolescents come into some of the adolescent services for the Department of Mental Health or other ways that they might receive services. And sometimes the parents want some additional support to connect with other parents who are going through similar issues or help with their children. And Laura could also tell you more about that if that would be an interest of yours. I want to thank Dr. Nagar Beheshti for organizing this program and She'll be able to, in much more detail, talk about all of our guests in addition to herself who will be speaking. This topic of the complex world of bullying. I want to thank you all for coming to give your expertise and knowledge and experience that's going to be so important for all of us to share. I love that the audience includes a very broad range of folks so that we can really also potentially get into some questions and dialogue later. You were seeing early on when we were getting technically organized that also the Barry Health Center is dialed in and is able to see us tonight. So I want to thank the group at Barry for also being online and again, part of that technology world of getting information out. I want to thank also the exhibitors who have come here tonight for sharing their work and information. So I hope you're able to tap in and connect there also. We've also, the media is so important and getting information out to the community. And we're grateful that the media is here tonight. I want to thank WICN Radio and also our guests, Catalin, Tippin from Channel 3 and Jessica Andrew from Channel 13. So again, you're in the audience somewhere, and I want to really thank you for your coming and listening and also providing that information out to the community. Well, I'm trying, Laura, to lengthen this a bit so we can make sure that our commissioner from the Department of Mental Health would be here, but I think I'm going to have to just launch forward unless you want to come up yourself and recognize anybody else I haven't mentioned. Okay, so although they're not right in the room, they're probably dealing with the traffic that we all enjoy when I go to Boston, but the Department of Mental Health Commissioner Barbara Liedholm, amazing person, really committed to this field, has to make a lot of tough decisions in budget difficult years like we are now. I don't envy her with the public forum with which you have to make some of these tough decisions. I do applaud her work strongly, and I know her commitment to children and adolescents. And her right hand over the Child and Adolescent Services is Joan McCullough, and Joan equally is a terrific advocate for the mental health needs and the wellness of adolescents. They've been the promoters of getting parents more engaged and connected to treatment. They've been the proponents of having more peer specialists to have a sense of support and connection. So we want to all be very grateful to the services and how they try to protect it in even these budget tough times. So again, big thanks for all coming out. I'm going to pass it back to Laura.
Thank you, Doug. As Doug mentioned, my name is Laura Myers, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you. Also, on behalf of the Department of Psychiatry and the UMass Medical School and Memorial Healthcare, and thank you for being with us this evening. A quick housekeeping detail: the bathrooms are literally right out the door, either that hallway or if you go in the back, they're very easy to find. There's coffee, tea, healthy cookies, cheese and crackers, all things that are good for your cholesterol, things to keep you awake, water, whatever, and feel free to walk in and out and have whatever you like. We're going to take questions at the end of all the presentations, and we've left at least a half hour, and we'll take as much time as you need. This is your night, and we are here for you, and so you should feel free to be thinking of your questions as people are speaking. And I hope you did not miss the exhibits, but if you did, just remember that when you come to any Be Mentally Well evening, we will always have exhibitors. We think it's important to create opportunities to share information, and we are very lucky that there are many organizations throughout this medical center and in the community who are anxious to be part of those exhibits. So always leave yourself a little bit of time to do that. We're going to begin this evening with Dr. Nagar Beheshti, who is currently the Assistant Director for the Division of Child Psychiatry at UMass Memorial Medical Center and at the medical school. She is the Director of Child Psychiatry Consultation and Liaison Services, and she's the Assistant Professor of Psychiatry and Pediatrics, as well as being Head of Child Psychiatry Emergency Mental Health Services. So she has lots of titles and lots of responsibilities. She received completed her fellowship at Children's Hospital in Boston and received her doctorate from the University of Minnesota and did her general psychiatry residency at Hennepin Region's psychiatry program in Minneapolis, Minnesota. She is published significantly, and just several of the things that are more local and relevant to this community. One is on bullying awareness, interventions and a model for change, which was published in 2010. She did a book review on psychiatric intensive care and spoke and was online in the Telegram and Gazette on Speaking with Your Children about the Haiti earthquake. So it's with great pleasure that I welcome and invite Dr. Nagar Beheshti.
Yeah, to speak into this. Okay, I'm going to try to speak to this because I can't figure out how to turn on this mic unless Laura can help me.
Or you want this?
That's right. No, just do that.
This is for the power.
Okay, great. All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us in this wonderful evening of talking about such an important topic that's really an epidemic in our country and worldwide. I'd like to first start with defining what actually is bullying. So bullying is repeated and deliberate verbal and physical harassment. It also causes social exclusion over time towards another who has difficulty defending him or herself, and from a person who is perceived to be dominant or stronger than themselves. Now, a lot of people ask, well, isn't bullying the same as teasing? Well, actually, it's not, because teasing does not cause deliberate verbal harm chronically like bullying does. Bullying is a chronic harassment and social exclusion over time. So why do youth bully? You know, there's multiple reasons. But, you know, one of them is because, you know, some of their peers are more easily targeted. They're easily intimidated. And interestingly, girls tend to be more into verbal bullying, the other girls. And boys, you know, they're physical intimidators. If there are bullies, they tend to threaten physically, and they don't care if you're a boy or girl. They just want to intimidate if they are bullies or aggressors. So why do youth bully? You know, as you see, there's a ton of reasons why, but I put some of the more prevalent ones. The first three, power, acceptance, and being cool, is really kind of, you know, tips the chart. For example, you get a new kid in school, 6th grader. You know, he's tiny, he might look a little different than everybody else in school, and so a bigger kid happens to come by and go, you know, make some kind of insulting gesture. And oh, somebody passes by and says, oh, that was pretty funny, despite this kid not crying and, you know, being, you know, harassed and feeling horrible. Oh, all of a sudden the aggressor gets attention. And so what happens? He gets more attention, he's accepted more, he becomes cool. And so this poor new kid now is a target for a lot of other people for these aggressors to gain power. Some of it could be acting out from problems from home. So sometimes if kids come from abusive families or have seen abusive violence acts throughout their childhood, they could potentially act that out. Sometimes it could be revenge. The bully becomes the bullier. About a year ago, there was a boy in Australia who actually, I don't know if any of you saw this, but it actually spread quite worldwide. It was a big, I think it was about 12 years old, if I'm not mistaken, but a bigger, boy being picked by a group of kids who were much tinier, more appropriately sized 12-year-old kid. And one of the group bullies basically was videotaping this bigger boy being teased. And finally, apparently during this video, he happened to snap and actually pick up the kid and throw him across the street, well, across the sidewalk, wherever they were. And so, the bullier then, straggles up and walks around. And all of a sudden, this videotape, which was actually put on social, networking sites, went viral. And so there were, cartoons of this big boy, being the Incredible Hulk, standing up for himself, which, in a way was great because he was a hero. But the catch-22 in this is that if you're actually promoting this kid to stand up with aggression, then that could become problematic as well. Some of it could be insecurity or lack of social skills with an attack-first defense mechanism on kids who want attention. And again, that goes back to, wanting to be cool or wanting to be accepted. More so with girls, jealousy of others. Let's say you and your best friend, think a guy is cute and the guy asks your best friend out to prom, and what happens? Your best friend also turns on you and spreads these evil messages through cyber space, and there you have it, and it continues on for months on end. Some of them, the kids may not have a good handle on their anger. Sometimes it could be that they were never really, really learned how to interact appropriately. They may have very low social or problem-solving skills, and they may genuinely not have empathy or really be unaware of their actions towards others. And there's many more, but these are the top ones. So some recent stats on bullying, 30% of 6th and 10th graders were a bully or a target of bullying, or both. Also, on any given day, as many as 160,000 students nationwide may stay home because they're afraid that they're going to be bullied. That's pretty big. So what happens to the victims of bullying? They often develop low self-esteem. They get depressed, they get anxious, and oftentimes this may have subsequent effects that interfere with their social and emotional well-being and development, as well as their academic performance. So if you see your child, for example, is thriving, honor roll, and then all of a sudden, within a year or 2 years span time, they're declining grade, that might be a sign. May not be, maybe other things, but that might be a sign. And as we know, sometimes they develop suicidal thoughts. And in the past couple of years, we know that in Massachusetts, there have been at least 2 completed suicides because these poor kids have not been able to endure the chronic harassment of their aggressors, and so found that suicide is the only way out. And just briefly on cyberbullying, because we have the next speaker speaking on cyberbullying, but I just want to give you a taste of it. So it's a relatively new phenomenon with this generation. It's, of course, bullying through electronic means like emailing, texting, social networking. And it's used to basically send mean or threatening messages or images towards somebody else. And the interesting thing is that there's more and more news breaks I've seen. That the Today Show, I guess about 6 months ago, a year ago, did a piece on this where this person now is in college, but apparently when she was in high school, an anonymous person actually made a Facebook page on their behalf, but it was all lies, really self-deprecating things written on her behalf. And so it was really detrimental to her well-being and her image as she went forward. And I think she actually ended up going through the courts and pressing charges eventually. So cyberbullying, teasing, again, taunting chronically and deliberately, and it could spread quite quickly. It's viral. The difference between cyberbullying and bullying is that actual bullying, the kids go in school, 4 walls, it's contained, they leave, and they can leave that behind. With cyberbullying, it's everywhere. It goes worldwide. There's no boundary. So these poor kids can't get away from it. Again, we'll talk more about this with the next speaker. So some of the early signs of being bullied. One is withdrawal. So if you see your child all of a sudden, Timmy, who was very social, loved to play, all of a sudden wants to stay in his room more, doesn't want to interact with peers, that could be a sign. Not going to school, like all of a sudden getting scared of getting on the school bus, or not wanting to do organized activities like, for example, your child really loves hockey. Hockey season is starting. He does not want to get near the ice. Well, that's kind of odd, that could be a sign. Interestingly, there's always physical signs with this too. Headaches, abdominal pain. It could affect your child's appetite, their sleep, as well as it can even develop cold-like symptoms. So interestingly, I actually work on the pediatric units here, consulting on the floor for them. And we have a lot of cases, especially from now to probably about March, where kids come in for headaches, abdominal pain. They get the $1 million workup. Everything's fine. What's going on? After a couple of days in the hospital while they're doing tests, they call a psych consult. Maybe there's something else. So we go in, we talk to them, and lo and behold, they've been chronically harassed and bullied in school. So you talk more to the families, you talk more to the student, and oh my gosh, they're now withdrawn. They're not engaging in peer activities. They're not having as much sleepover. So, it could present itself in many ways. So how to help the victim? It's really important to tell the victim of bullying that it's not their fault, because somehow they start thinking it's them. There's something wrong with them. And that's not true. You really need to empower these children who are victims to be more assertive. And assertive, not necessarily throw a kid across, the street, but to try to ignore him as hard as it is. And to walk away and to seek help from teachers or even the janitor who's down the hall. And really explain to them that the true goal of a bully is to really get a rise from them. So it's better to get the consequential rise from a teacher or authority figure rather than the poor victim, crying or sobbing or whatever. And honestly, if you can imagine, if there's an aggressor and they're yelling and screaming and trying to assault this kid, if you walk away and other people are watching this bully's going to look kind of crazy, right? Because he's yelling and screaming and the kid's walking away. Who knows who he's yelling and screaming at to tease. And again, chronically and deliberately. I'm using tease kind of liberally so you kind of get used to using the fluidity, but really the tease is not the chronic deliberate harassment as you see in bullying. So just a brief overview, and again, our other panelists will talk a little bit more about these programs, but there's a program called the Ulvaeus Bullying Prevention Program. It was developed by Dr. Dan Ulvaeus, who is a professor of psychology from Norway. He's done decades and decades of research in Norway about bullying and how to keep children from becoming victims of bullying and having it be a safe environment for them. So in the early 80s, he actually proposed enacting a law against bullying in schools in Norway. And actually, it became a law in the mid-80s in Sweden and Norway. So the key to this program is basically to aim to change social norms and to promote passive acceptance of bullying behavior is not acceptable, okay? And he tried to make it flexible enough so that it could actually be implemented throughout the world. The only caveat to this, and you'll see, is that Norway and Sweden, those countries have a very homogeneous society, so it's really much easier to implement it in societies like this. The real challenge is to bring it to the US and see if it works in the US. So that's what he did in the mid-80s. After the law was passed in Norway and Sweden, he came over to the United States and worked with a professor, Dr. Susan Limber, from Clemson University in South Carolina, to see if it would work in a society like ours. And it did. It had some positive results. So the first systemic evaluation he did with his American colleagues involved 18 middle schools in South Carolina. And after 1 year of doing this, they actually saw large and significant decreases in boys and girls' repeated bullying of each other, and also large and significant decreases in boys' reports of being bullied and in boys' reports of being socially isolated. So it was good. But South Carolina, again, it might have more of that homogeneous population. So they're like, all right, this is cool. So let's try it in Philadelphia, in the rough neighborhoods of Philadelphia. So they actually implemented this program in 12 elementaries across Philadelphia. And even though the results weren't as large the fidelity was still there, and there was still some significant reduction in self-reported being bullied and victimized, as well as there was significant decrease in adults observation of kids being bullied, more specifically in the cafeteria and playgrounds where bullying usually happens. So, it works. The most robust decreases, obviously, were noted when there was stronger parent and family and community involvement, as seen in Norway. And that the other thing that's important is that with any anti-bullying program, including the Volvaeus program, that clear learning objectives and effective implementation of these guidelines should be the foundation. And it should be clear and everybody be on the same page. The other critical foundation to any of these programs should be the role of the bystander. So what is that? So teachers, parents, and the community at large via the anti-bullying programs that are around should teach youth that they should not just be, witnessing bullying and walking away. Really what they should be doing is being taught that it's not okay, absolutely not okay to be a bystander and instigator of bullying. So instead of just standing around or egging on the bullier, the aggressor, they should go to authority figures and say, listen, Timmy is being harassed. We need to do something about it. That's the only way that this could happen, is kids being educated about it. The other thing this will prevent is a lot of victims don't want to go and talk because they're threatened that if they actually go and tell people, that they may actually get teased more, chronically harassed more. There's consequences. So if everybody's in on it and everybody's saying this is wrong, they may be more empowered to be able to do that also for themselves. In the case of cyberbullying, the general message should be don't respond to any messages out there and report these messages to adults and authority figures, parents, teachers, even physicians. And really, these victims, even minimal actions of standing up for each other really goes a long way, because these poor kids have not had anybody stand up for them, and they're always in isolation, or nearly always they feel in isolation, and that could eventually lead to suicidal thoughts. So on the other hand, let's look at, the aggressor, the bully. So parents, teachers, and physicians should also be on the lookout for that. Because as I'll talk in the next slide, there are significant consequences for people who are aggressors. So some signs could be if they're frequently fighting, if they're destroying and stealing, if they're vandalizing, if they're doing any kind of destructive behavior. You should start, talking to your child, or the teacher talking to the parent's child. Did you know that Johnny was doing this? Did you know that Kimmy was doing this? And they should also be told that this behavior is under no circumstances tolerated. So it needs to stop. So some tips for parents who might suspect their kids are aggressors or bullies: spend more time with your children and carefully supervise and monitor their activities. That way you really know what's going on. Also make it a point to find out who your kids' friends are. And how they spend their time with each other and where they spend their time. Also, you want to share your concerns with teachers, counselors, physicians, anybody you think that might be able to help. At the end of the day, if it's really clear that a youth is a bully, a referral to a mental health professional for comprehensive evaluation may be helpful to understand the cause of the bullying and to stop the destructive behavior. So what are the consequences if there's no intervention in kids who bully? So research shows that bullies are at high risk for dropping out of school, getting into fights, vandalizing, shopping, as well as getting involved in substance use. Also, if there's no intervention, there's a 4 to 6 times more likely chance that they will actually have one criminal conviction by the age of 24 if there's no intervention. So that's pretty big. So, the aggressors are suffering just as much as the victims, and that should be addressed. So in conclusion, bullying is an individual and societal problem. So in lieu of the Anti-Bullying Act in Massachusetts, it's urgent that all those who work with youth work together to cooperate for the future well-being of our nation's youth. And with that, I'll hand it off to Laura Myers, or the next speaker.
Thanks, Nagar. That was a terrific intro, outlined all the issues in a clear way. Even though I've already done introductions, I'm going to bump into the lineup again just quickly. Although I did give a nice intro to the Department of Mental Health Commissioner, Barbara Leedholm, and the Assistant Commissioner of Child and Adolescent Services, Joan McCullough. They weren't here, but I want to recognize them because, as I said before, they're tireless workers for the state, for mental health needs of all of us. And they're so committed to the kids and the adolescents of our state, not only how in tough economic times you have to make tough choices, but how do we create more creative programs so that kids don't end up needing the mental health services? What can we do in prevention in addition to the kind of excellent services that we're doing? So like tonight's night is an example of that. So most of you don't even know behind the scenes the great work that they're doing. So I'm going to ask Barbara and Joan to quickly just stand up and let's give them a hand.
Thank you, Jeff. It's now my pleasure to introduce Attorney M. Julie Lejeune, who is the Assistant District Attorney for Worcester County, and she works with the Office of District Attorney Joseph D. Early, and she has been in that position since 1988, and she's not even gray. She's the prosecutor assigned to various district courts, juvenile court, and child abuse and sexual assault unit prosecuting felonies in the Worcester Superior Court. She's currently assigned to District Attorney Joe Early's Jr.'s Community Outreach Unit. And so she works with schools, agencies, police, parents, colleges, medical professionals to provide proactive prevention education programs on numerous subjects, including mandated reporter and child abuse laws, bullying and cyberbullying, drug trends, safe and responsible use of technology, underage drinking, and social host liability laws. She just informed me that she actually has spoken to 2 schools already in southern Worcester County today. So this is her third speech. She received her BA from Regis College. She has received her doctorate in 1987 from the New England School of Law in Boston. She's the 205 recipient of the Massachusetts District Attorney Association's Gerard D. Downing Community Service Award, the 2004 recipient of the Girl Scouts of Montechusett Council's Woman of Distinction Award, and the 2006 recipient of the Dynamy Youth Contributor of the Year Award. So it's now my pleasure to welcome Attorney Lejeune.
Thank you all. That made me sound better than I really am. And I thank UMass Medical School, Department of Psychiatry, and UMass Memorial Healthcare for having the District Attorney's Office part of this presentation. And I know that I'm happy to be a part of District Attorney Joseph D. Early Jr.'s outreach program, because we like to see kids not in crises, in schools, giving them knowledge, which is power, educating them, raising awareness, parents, teachers, and the students, because prevention is a critical component to crime prevention. And the district attorney, I know, does not like to see kids in courtrooms. He likes to see them in the classroom, succeeding. And so a forum like this really helps us. As the doctor said, it's a collaborative community effort, community response. So we don't want to see kids in crisis, targeted, or in handcuffs. So I could stand here and say one thing. Oh, it's, I could stand here and say one thing and then sit down and turn it over to the other speakers. And that would be, if all of us monitored technology, if we have teenagers especially, but even when they're on Club Penguin, as a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, if we all sat there and constantly monitored cell phones and computers, you wouldn't need anything else to do. How many here in this room would let their 13-year-old adolescent head out the door, maybe right after supper, and say, "See you later, have a good time"? Or would you ask where they were going? Would you probably be supervising them, driving them somewhere? But you'd be getting the lowdown on every detail, where they were going, who they were going to be with, who was going to be at their friend's house down the street. But we don't do enough of that when they sit in your own home and use technology, or they go off to school with their mobile computer in their hand. We have to monitor. And I'm going to be telling you, I like to use cases when I'm in schools. I use actual cases without naming names, closed cases that we've dealt with. But I will tell you, this is a good slide that my colleagues in the unit and all use that kind of plays out why is cyberbullying so prevalent? Why is it, why is it added an extra piece to regular bullying that makes it 24/7, as the doctor said? And it's part of it is the anonymous nature of it. So this is a good slide. We like to show kids as well as parents and teachers. On the internet, nobody knows you're a dog. And unfortunately, in my years of prosecuting child abuse cases, kids don't understand that it might be a dog, but it could be a predator. And it very often is. Unfortunately, kids don't get that. And so we, as the adults in their lives, whether it's a teacher, a coach, some mentor, a mental health counselor, a practitioner, or the parent, or the older sister. I see some youth here. The older sister, we've got to keep reminding them, you may not be talking to the person you really believe you're talking to. And so that's a real strong message. Kids let their guard down, and we have situations in schools all the time. I hear from school folks where good kids, their academics, awesome. They're involved in every extracurricular activity, and yet they're going on the computer a lot of times late at night, a lot of times with some peer pressure. Come on, let's check this website out. Let's hassle her. We're jealous of her. And they go on and they let their guard down. And they say things they'd never say face to face. So here's a perfect example of that, letting their guard down. Good kids saying bad things. A young man was in court. He had posted something on his Facebook wall and also made some threatening text messages. And some of the things he posted on his Facebook wall, horrendous racial slurs against a particular student in his school. His mother was asked by the judge at the arraignment, "Ma'am, are you proud of this, what he posted on his wall? Because that can be evidence in court. So if you ever had a child that you're helping mentor, or you're the parent, and they come to you and you find, or you're monitoring, doing the right thing, and you see something posted on their wall or posted on one of their friends' walls, or they get a text message, print it out, say that as evidence. It can be used in court. The police have to prove that, get some evidence that it was from the person who we say it was sent from, and there are ways to do that. Time is of the essence to report it to the police, but those printouts are usually shown to the judge at an arraignment, the first time a person's brought into court, or a clerk magistrate. Well, in this case, the judge was reading it and asked the mother of this young man, "How do you feel about what he posted on his wall and what he texted to this student?" And she said, "Well, that's Facebook. That's the way you talk on Facebook. It's not real. It's virtual reality. It's not really what he said or meant. It's Facebook, and we all talk that way." So we, as the adults, have to continually reinforce the message that what you say on the internet or on a text message is just like the spoken word face to face. It has power, it can cut, it can really hurt, and it can be a case that ends up being prosecuted in a court of law, changing the course of the aggressive student, and of course, we're talking the targeted student too affected, because they can reread it, and it goes viral, as the doctor said, and everybody reads it. It's not, I said this to you face to face, and it's between the two of us. Everyone now reads it. So it just takes on a life of its own. So this, in this case, the mother said that to the judge, and then the judge said, well, what if I asked your son to come up here in the courtroom and read it? Well, I'd be so disappointed in him if he was saying that out loud. Totally two different worlds, and we have to merge the worlds. We really have to make sure people understand, all of us, adults as well as children, that there's no difference between being a good citizen in the real world and in our virtual world. One thing that also to go on with, no one knows you're a dog. I go into schools every day, and second and third graders will explain to me how they're on Facebook, sometimes with parent supervision. Sometimes the parent has helped them create the profile, but what is the age you have to be to use Facebook? And now when I'm talking Facebook, we're talking all social networking sites, Xanga, Friendster, Friend Finder, Twitter, any social networking site where they are connected to the World Wide Web. So, but on Facebook, what's the minimum age? YouTube, what's the 13. Some of you were not aware. I talk to parents all the time, and they're unaware that it's 13. So we need to educate them. It's 13, and I think that's too young for kids that are with an impulsive adolescent mind, making decisions. They are not at the critical thinking stage to say, this isn't something I should do. This isn't somebody I should be talking to. I'm going to accept so many of my friends, hundreds of friends I don't even know, to be popular. So this was a headline that I saw Facebook. You know, there's 10-year-olds on Facebook. There's 8-year-olds on Facebook. And for the young people here who might be under the age of 13, Facebook does delete accounts. It takes time, but if you have a child that it has a Facebook and they are underage, you can report it to Facebook, and they will take action. And again, it takes time because there's so many users, but they can pull that profile. And I had a young man come up to me and say, he was 8, he looked about 5, very young face. I said, you put your face on Facebook, that face, and you said you were 18? And you wonder why they took your profile down. He came home from school one day and it was gone. But they, you know, they can't take down everyone's site that's underage. It's impossible, you know, and then they just open up a new one. But make sure you know 13 is the minimum age to have a Facebook. YouTube. How many kids have you seen posting videos on YouTube? You have to be 13. Now, is it illegal? Does anyone realize if it's illegal? Kids ask me this all the time. It isn't illegal, technically, to say you're 18, but they're violating the user agreement, which gives Facebook the right to take your profile down and delete it. Of course, does delete mean delete in cyberspace? And that's another message. You have to talk to kids from the time they're little ones. I have 6-year-old twins. And I'm starting to talk and have the dialogue, and I post a contract next to the computer. This is what they use, and they're not connected to the World Wide Web. They're not playing any games with people who we don't know, maybe a dog, or maybe something worse. I love dogs. But posting a contract with your child on the side of the computer, these are the rules. And it really also surprises me how many people allow the kids to, as young as 8, 7, to have a laptop in their bedroom. Because it's late at night when the temptation to go on that computer one time, to update a profile, to play a computer game, it's that temptation late at night when parents are asleep that bad things can happen. Oftentimes they do during the night. So it should be time restrictions, always. So the doctor summarized, so I always say lawyers can't order a pizza in an hour, so I only have 20 minutes and I'm trying to condense, but cyberbullying is another way call it is electronic aggression. It's aggressive behavior. And does anyone know what trolling is? Yes, figures a young person.
Trolling is anything that would be a negative response to anything posted on the internet or any electronic media.
So what happens with trolling though, I may have a Facebook and someone starts trolling on me that doesn't even know me. So that's another dynamic of cyberbullying, that it's not just I'm going after the kid in my school that I don't like and I want to target. It's also people you don't even know will go on people's Facebooks. And it happens a lot when there's been a tragedy involving a young person taking their own life. For instance, Phoebe Prince, people who she did not even know, who lived in other parts of the world, said things, posted things on her Facebook about her, just joined in, that joining in mentality, and not realizing that words have power, and we have to remind people, we have to remind ourselves that at the other end of this machine is a living, breathing human being with feelings, especially in the area of cell phones. One suggestion or a couple of tips, I liked the doctor's suggestion that you get to know your children's friends, because there's a key component there. But I talk to a lot of parents who say, my child doesn't have a Facebook. A couple of tips there. Their friends have Facebook, because that's why they're going to ask you to have Facebook. Everyone has it. Check their friends' Facebooks and all social networking. See what their friends are posting. What kinds of comments they're saying. Pictures of your own child might be on a Facebook of a friend. A picture you don't want on the internet. So Google and do some checks to see if your child's friends have Facebook or MySpace, whatever social networking site. A couple of other tips came to my attention that high school students have found Facebook to be passé now. This is real important. They still have Facebook to socialize, but they do not give out all details of their lives on Facebook. They used to, and that is how a lot of law enforcement officers found out information about certain, illegal activity, or how people were having their houses broken into. We're going away for the weekend, and people knew about it. Or underage drinking parties. Mom's away, I'm having some friends over, and then somebody crashes with alcohol. So everyone was spilling their guts on Facebook. Where are they going now? I bet you can tell me. This young man over here. Where are they going? Facebook is still being used, but to gather people for a party, a flash mob, or to discuss illegal activity that kids might be getting involved in, underage drinking, whatever. Where are they going? Twitter. Twitter is the new one. So you got to get involved in Twitter, and I don't have enough time to tell you how to do it. There's a lot of good information on the internet, how to sign up. You can sign up anonymously and follow. And we had some situations where police were able to keep some kids protected who had been using marijuana before the school day. And they were in school after having had some marijuana. Twitter was, a parent said, I just Twittered my kid's friends, found them. They were bragging about getting high before class. So you can find out a lot of things that are happening. Just very quickly on the law, criminal harassment is the law that we use. It's the closest, there's no such crime as bullying with the new bullying law. There is no such crime. It is so you're not under arrest for bullying. It's criminal harassment. And if you notice the doctor's slides on what is bullying, some of the language is even in this law. It's been on the book since 2000. It's a misdemeanor, so no police officer could place a child under arrest, a teenager, an adult, for criminal harassment. There has to be a clerk's hearing because it's a misdemeanor. A clerk's hearing in juvenile court if you're under 17 years of age, 16 or under, or adult court if you're over 17. Its maximum penalty is 2.5 years. What this law is if you cause emotional distress. So it's not hitting your target physically with your fist and causing physical injury. It's if you cause on purpose, intentionally, maliciously, and 3 or more times, you have caused emotional distress. So in the instance of cyberbullying, that would be the crime that most closely we could charge. There also could be identity fraud. We just had a situation of a 6th grader who had a Facebook. It happened in Connecticut, but her dad's a police officer in Worcester County. 6th grader had a Facebook. She was too young to. And this is some of the dangers. Her picture was cut and a new profile created by her ex-friend out to get her. And so that was identity fraud and theft. So pretending, posing on the internet to be somebody else in an attempt to cause emotional distress and harass her. One thing young people don't know, making harassing calls. Remember the prank calls? That's a crime. It's been on the books for a long time, 2.5 years in jail. You know, not going to happen, but I always see knowing glances between kids when I say, did you know making annoying calls 3 or more times is a crime? I just want to point out that there's a whole different area of the law that involves bullying, but bullying, harassing people who are in a protected class. It's a civil rights violation. If there is a chronic situation, whether it's online or face-to-face or a combination, which usually it is a combination if it involves kids that know each other, if you discriminate against someone based on race, color, religion, national origin, gender, sexual orientation, and disability. And I will tell you the 2 most vulnerable populations are special needs students, whether it's online or face-to-face, and the GLBT population of students. So the law gives extra protection if you are in that protected class. And one example is the Phoebe Prince tragedy in South Hadley, and that involved Facebook as well as face-to-face bullying. And so cyberbullying as well. And this is one of the defendants, looks fine, good outstanding citizen, told to wear a suit for court by his lawyer, I'm sure. He was found guilty and he was charged with harassment and civil rights violations. She was from Ireland, and that was part of the reason for the bullying. They targeted her because she was from a different country. And so it is treated more seriously in the court if you're targeting someone in that protected class. And I'm going to skip this. One thing with cyberbullying and the new law, just schools cannot discipline a student for out-of-school activity, such as posting something on Facebook, unless there is a connection with the school environment. The student can't learn because that bully's still in their face 24/7. Or it's affecting their right to an education, and it's disrupting the regular school. And so one final thing legal-wise, at the same time the new bullying law was passed, there was a new 258E harassment prevention order that kind of mimics the wording of the criminal harassment law. 3 or more acts on purpose, maliciously done out of cruelty, hostility, revenge, and it causes fear, intimidation, or damage to property. A person can go and get a harassment prevention order for a chronic bullying situation. It's happened over the course of the last year or so in juvenile court. Juvenile court, if the parties are under the age of 17, the order would be sought in juvenile court. It's different from a restraining order where you have to go to district court or superior court if they're juveniles. And there have been some cases of chronic bullying occurring at a school level. A parent of the targeted student doesn't want criminal charges, doesn't want to brand a kid a delinquent, but wants protection, wants this aggressive student to leave their child alone. And the school's disciplining, but this is a tool that you go to the courts and it's some protection for a kid that's tormented. And it has been issued in Worcester County. Sexting is a form of cyberbullying. And I will tell you, there's been too many instances, sexting, and it is happening all over the country, the world. It's the passing of inappropriate pictures. And we do a lot of presentations on this for the DA's office because the purpose of child pornography laws are to target pedophiles that prey on children. It's not to go after high school students acting impulsively. However, if pictures are sent out in a harassing way to bully someone, to ruin their reputation, to destroy them, go viral, that it could be prosecuted. And it's possession and dissemination of child pornography is the charge. I've had some situations, we really stress, a picture is forever. Teen dating relationships are usually not. But kids are impulsive and they don't think about tomorrow, and they're sending these pictures off voluntarily. And so we really try to focus on self-respect when we go into the classrooms, and to talk about also abusive relationships. I'm seeing in teen dating violence relationships, kids are sending their picture to their dating partner, trusting that it'll be between the two of them. Then there's an ugly breakup, or one of the dating partners wants out of the relationship and it's used as blackmail. And we do a lot of education for the teachers too, that needs to be addressed, that has to be acted on. It's harassing, bullying behavior, to hold someone kind of prisoner on giving that picture out. And also, I will also tell the young people, especially here, don't loan your phone to anyone, because we've had a lot of situations where someone will do something, cyberbully someone, and when they've borrowed their best friend's phone, and then they give it back to you, and you are traced to the threatening text. So kids should not pass their phone around to each other. And I'm talking about the adolescent impulsive actions of teenagers. And it's still, you can look at the headlines every month and find adults like this mother who cyberbullied a teenager whose daughter was dissed by the girl. One thing for parents, we do have sometimes parents say, I emailed the mom of the kid who's bullying my kid. I didn't want to deal with it, have the school involved. So I sent her an email, and then she claimed I was bullying her, and back and forth. Never good to contact the person, the parents, because it's a volatile situation. Everyone is emotional. It's better to work closely with the school and police if you have to, but not to get involved in direct communication to try to resolve things. And teach your child and any children in your care never to post images that your grandmother wouldn't mind seeing, and that you wouldn't mind being on a billboard. This young man got 45 days in prison for sending pictures of another student in his school all over the school, and it became viral. He got 45 days in state prison and then probation. And I thought that this is a good insight into what the adolescent brain was thinking at the time he did this. The internet seemed safer because it wasn't face-to-face. And we weren't thinking, and technology, the downfall of technology is it's instant. So kids don't think before they post and send. So it's too late to retrieve it back, and the damage has already been done. So we have to remind them, again, you got to be a good digital citizen. If you're angry, put the computer down, put the cell phone down, step away. Don't respond to someone who's pushing your buttons. But too often, students join in. It's like a riot, like this kid said. We were just going in and joining the cyberbullying, joining by passing the picture on. Very disturbing, and I don't have too much more time, but monitor cell phones. We just had a father who saw some pictures that his daughter was trading in a chat room. And I will give you the chat room's name was Kik, K-I-K, apparently. And his daughter unknowingly sent pictures that she was asked to send. to someone out of state. And it's a big website where you can talk to anybody from other parts of the country and the world, but you can also trade photos. She unfortunately traded some pictures of herself partially clothed. And, you know, it's happening everywhere. So we as parents have to monitor that cell phone because it is a mobile computer. So one of the ways you can monitor it is to make sure you charge it at night when you're all asleep. Make sure everyone before they go to bed gives you the cell phone, and you charge it in your bedroom so that no one has the temptation to be talking and on that cell phone or sending pictures of themselves off to who knows who. So these are a couple of disturbing comments that kids who have been involved in sexting, sending out inappropriate pictures. It's a really good picture of me. What's the big deal? It's just harmless flirting. It's an electronic hickey of yesterday's world. That's what some experts have said, this sexting, and why good kids are doing it. Good kids are getting involved in it. Everyone's doing it. It means he or she cares. We've seen some abusive relationships of late where the person will say, if you really loved me, you'd send me this picture. Don't you trust me? And putting the mind games, playing emotional mind games. And this will get his attention or her attention. So we really have to remind kids it can result in a tragedy like happened to this young woman. So it's very, very serious with potential legal consequences that we don't want any teenager to face. But we also don't want to destroy someone whose picture is out there and they can't get it back. One of the things I like to preach to people is sleepovers are dangerous. I have prosecuted far more sexual assaults than you'd want to imagine happening at a sleepover that is not adequately supervised. So if your children do go on a sleepover, please make sure you find out where's that computer in the house. Is the parent who's supervising going to stop the communication on the computer and maybe have everyone put their cell phones somewhere overnight? Because the group mentality, like that kid who went to jail for 45 days said, group mentality, let's check this out, let's cyberbully her, let's do this. And it's a breeding ground for trouble. So make sure you know that supervision is going to extend to the computer. Another thing is some parents have said, I'm going to take away my kid's cell phone and computer use if they violate my rules. Try to work out a deal ahead of time. Kids are so connected to technology that it's like cutting off their hand. And that's their social network. That's their social connection. And so you take away the cell phone completely, that can emotionally destroy them. That can send them to the ER. And so we want to make sure you have other ways to discipline kids other than taking away technology. Restrict it though. And those are some just a couple of tips. And get savvy on text messaging and what emoticons are. You can find out a lot about what's troubling a kid, that they're using alcohol, some substance, they're being bullied. If you definitely know computer slang, text slang, and emoticons. Final thing I'm going to say is just be very careful about your children using technology and posting pictures, because people can find out, it's called geotagging, they can find out longitude and latitude and where your children are when they post pictures. There's ways of reformatting pictures so that it's harder for a cyberbully to take your child's picture off Facebook and make it into something to humiliate them with all the students at school. There's also ways to protect the public from taking your child's pictures. Finally, I can't stand up here and give you all the technology advice on how to use Facebook and social networking sites safely. But there is this website, connectsafely.org. They have a parent's guide to Facebook and other social networking sites. Facebook is constantly evolving and changing its security settings, privacy settings, and they keep up to date on this. So I would highly recommend you accessing that website so that you can download a copy and continually look at it so that you know how to monitor your children and teach them to use technology in a safe way and respectful way. Okay, thank you. And
Thank you. Oh, I have to, okay. Thank you, Julie. Judith Thompson is the Coordinator of Counseling, Psychology, and Community Outreach Services for the Worcester Public Schools. She has worked for many years as a school psychologist, providing services to preschool children through high school and in special education programs. She currently supervises the professional activities of the school adjustment counselors, the social workers, and the school psychologists in Worcester, and her responsibilities include the coordination of the 504 process, McKinley-Vento Homeless Liaison, and administration of grant-funded programs serving children in foster care and addressing the mental health needs of all the children in the Worcester Public Schools. The school district's Positive Behavior Intervention and Support initiative has continued to grow under her leadership, and it is considered one of the major exemplar programs in Massachusetts. She participates in many state level and local interagency collaboratives concerning bullying and children's mental health, and she teaches graduate courses in child adolescent development and in school and family and community involvement. So it's a great pleasure to invite Judith Thompson.
Can you hear me now?
You get that rolling.
Up here, better? Okay, is that good? Can you hear me? Hi. Thank you for the invitation tonight. I'm very, very honored to be part of this distinguished panel. And Julie's always a hard act to follow, but I'll do my best. This ended up being animated, so it may get away from me occasionally. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our responsibilities in schools in Massachusetts. You can't hear me? You can't hear me. Okay. You want me to use this thing instead? Use this one? You want me to use this?
You can use all three.
How's this?
Now talk.
How's that?
Is that better?
Is that better?
No.
No. Let's just take this off, and I'll use the hand mic, okay? The only thing is I'm Italian in my background, so I might get going with this. That could be dangerous, right? Okay, thanks very much. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our responsibilities under the Massachusetts anti-bullying law as it impacts schools all across Massachusetts. As some of you know, Massachusetts established this law defining bullying back in the spring of 2010. And by the end of last year, by December of 2010, all schools in the district, all schools in the state, which is now just about 400 separate school districts in the state, as well as private parochial schools and special education schools, had to put together a bullying plan and submit it to the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, which used to be called the Department of Education, but they like a longer name now, so it's Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. The Massachusetts law that established bullying gave us this definition, which you'll hear varies a little bit from the one that Dr. Beheshti talked about and the criminal harassment definition that Attorney LaSure just talked about. And under the Massachusetts law, the definition of bullying is the repeated use by one or more students of a written, verbal, or electronic expression, or a physical act or gesture, or any combination thereof, directed at a target that has any of these effects: causes physical or emotional harm, places them in reasonable fear of harm to self or property damage, creates a hostile environment at school, infringes on the rights of the target at school, and for protected classes of students, that has particular implications, as Julie just mentioned, materially and substantially disrupts the educational process or orderly operation of a school. I want to flip back to the first part of that definition, just to point out that there's no intentionality mentioned in that definition. So that's quite a bit different from the definition of bullying that Dr. Beheshti referenced, which said intentional. And the harassment law that Julie talked about that says with malicious intent, with deliberation, with a deliberateness, a motivation behind it. So the implications of this definition, when you think about kids who are in a developmental process and who aren't fully formed yet and are still learning the difference between a behavior that might be hurtful or harmful or one that is not. I mean, we as adults sometimes, I don't know about you, but I know I've had the experience of unintentionally hurting somebody's feelings or embarrassing someone, or you're coming home from an event and your spouse says, you know, I really didn't appreciate the comment that you made, and your spouse says, well, I was only joking. I didn't think it would offend you. So if we as adults can fall into those traps, clearly children who haven't got nearly the level of sophisticated skills that most of us in the room have can fall into that trap pretty easily, because that bullying definition does not include intention. So that's a distinct difference. Another part of the Massachusetts law includes this definition of retaliation. Any form of intimidation, reprisal, or harassment directed against a student who reports bullying, so this would cover bystanders too, provides information during an investigation or witnesses or has reliable information about bullying. So this is intended, this part of the definition against prohibiting retaliation is to protect anybody who might report that they are being bullied or that they've seen someone else being bullied or help in an investigation. Not included in the definitions are these important factors that we consider to really constitute a bullying situation. An imbalance of power, all right? Peer-to-peer teasing is not uncommon, but you may not have a power differential there. The difference between a student who's a not disabled student and a disabled student, there's considered to be a power differential there. If you're a popular kid and you're bullying an unpopular kid, there's a power differential there. If somebody's way bigger than another kid, power differential there. So the power could derive from status or physical size. So, but that isn't included in the definition that Massachusetts gave us. How to intervene to affect positive change. The bullying law doesn't tell us any of that. Whether and when to use disciplinary consequences and how to use them. So these are pretty important details for implementing this law that Massachusetts gave us, but without a lot of clarity in some areas. So the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education published their model plan for schools, and they included several requirements. I've pulled out just a few of the highlights for you. Massachusetts Department of Education, DESE now, said, okay, every school district in the state has to come up with a plan to comply with the law, and the plan should follow this model, which I think you can still find online if you're really interested in looking at it. Some of the highlights of the requirements they gave us in developing those plans are public involvement in developing the plan, policy and procedure development for every school district. Policy development means having something that you pull together that your school committee vets and that they vote on, so it becomes official policy, and that you have associated procedures to follow so as to follow through with implementing the law. This would include reporting and investigation requirements, annual staff training every year, parent notifications and safety plannings being required as part of your whole procedure for interventions, a research-based curriculum on social skill development to be implemented across schools, and prevention and intervention strategies, as well as disciplinary consequences that are proportionate to the offense when it's identified. Some things that we know about bullying. The effects of bullying behavior can be very serious, but teasing, joking, and conflict are very common among kids who are equal peers. Just because there's a bullying law does not mean that kids will stop having regular kid-to-kid conflict and arguments at times. Sometimes there's not a power differential. Sometimes it's a difference of opinion, an argument, people who just don't like each other. So you still have normal peer-to-peer conflict, and we deal with that in schools as it comes up all the time. And teasing. It's a challenge for schools to interpret accurately both the behavior and the effects of the behavior, because bullying really is a behavior that's defined by its impact. You know, you can look at the behavior of an aggressor in a situation and not really be clear whether that's a bullying behavior, as opposed to something like an assault. If somebody hits somebody else, clearly that's an assault. We can see it. It's very concrete. It's a little easier to get your brain around it. But when we're talking about bullying behavior, we're talking about a behavior that's really defined by the impact that it has. In schools, in terms of trying to identify what is a bullying situation, we have to look for patterns, the imbalance of power, and the impact to decide what's really a bullying situation. The law, as you noted, did say the repeated use. So it's not a one-time thing. And that's a good thing. Kids are allowed to make a mistake once. But if there's a repeated pattern, then we have to start looking at it. Many who bully others have also been targets of bullying. That's something that has emerged with a lot more clarity over time. There are kids who grow up in families where bullying may be sort of a characteristic of the way power or authority is exerted by parents in the home. Sometimes kids are just mimicking what they have learned elsewhere. Sometimes they've learned it because they've been bullied by an older sibling or by other kids at school. And it's a learned behavior. So our best practices for prevention that we try to establish in school, a lot of the best practice stuff, if you look at research, including the OWIAS program that Dr. Beheshti mentioned, talk about establishing a positive social culture in school. That's like a big social marketing campaign where we decide what are the normative behaviors we're going to work toward in our school. This means the active teaching of expected social skills. This means explicitly teaching. This means training and placing staff for active monitoring and prevention of bullying behavior. One thing we know in schools is that staff supervision, adult supervision of children in locations where problem behaviors are most likely to occur, which is often transition times in the hallways, at recess, at lunch. Those are the less structured parts of the school day frequently. Placing staff for active monitoring and supervision of behavior is one of the most powerful resources we have. But being smart about where we allocate that resource is part of the charge that we have to deal with. And we shouldn't be surprised at this, since we know as adults we're the same way, right? We all know that the speed limit says 65 on the Mass Pike, right? But if you're going down the Mass Pike and you see a state trooper parked by the side of the road, what do you notice? All the brake lights are going on, right? All the brake lights are going on because we monitor ourselves more closely when we know we're being supervised. So why would we not expect kids to be the same way? So training and placing staff for active monitoring and prevention of bullying behavior. Training staff also is a big part of this, to say to them, you know, stop this before it becomes a problem. Learning how to intervene and redirect and remind kids with prompts of the right way to behave in those situations. Establishing and consistently enforcing school rules and policies related to bullying. Communicating with our families, making sure our families understand what are the expected behaviors in our school. And focusing some class time on peer relationship understanding and skills. Now, all the things you read on best practices say that these are critical things, and yet our teacher preparation programs, if you look at them right now, they don't include that in teacher preparation, and yet it is an expectation. People come into these jobs, I think, ordinarily thinking they're going to focus on being really effective teachers of curriculum. Certainly our mandates are on the curriculum. This stuff is not on the MCAS that our kids are evaluated on and our schools are evaluated on. And increasingly, some of our staff are going to be evaluated based on the growth that their kids show. But these are really critical practices for behavior, for prevention. And we like to always view the prevention of problem behaviors on a continuum of prevention to intervention. Intervening when bullying situations are identified requires accurate assessment of the situation. Is this real bullying, peer teasing, or regular conflict? Identifying the reasons for behavior. I think you saw before in Dr. Beheshti's slides several different reasons kids may engage in bullying behavior. So identifying those reasons and helping to address whatever the child is seeking through a more positive means is very important. Identifying the skills that need to be taught, whether these skills involve empathy, responsibility, assertiveness on the part of the target. How do you appropriately assert yourself? People don't bother you unless you let them bother you. But how do we teach kids at all their various developmental levels, because they're not all the same, how to do that effectively with their peers? Developing a plan to teach the needed skills. This is very much a part of our intervention plans when we have identified a bullying situation and a kid who needs to learn additional skills, either to address their aggressive behavior or the fact that they may be a repeated target. If a kid is repeatedly a target of bullying, what is it about that child's behavior that needs to be changed so that they are less of a target? Examples of school-wide approaches, and I'm going to talk a little bit about positive behavior interventions and supports because we do have a pretty large implementation of PBIS in our district, and we think it's one example. Excuse me, I got to grab the water. See, I talk a lot if you let me, and then I run in. This is one example of a school-wide approach. It's not the only school-wide approach, but it's one that we are very familiar with in Worcester. PBIS is effective because it addresses the social emotional learning needs of all students in the school, not those who are evidencing problems. What we do is we work with faculty to get a consensus about our highest priority behavior expectations, and most faculties will get together and they'll discuss this, and they might have focus groups, and then they vote. We ask them to vote on 3 to 5 expected behaviors that are usually very general, very broad, but stated positively. For example, a lot of schools will come up with rules that sound like be responsible, be respectful, be safe, and be ready. And again, you're not saying, don't run in the halls. You're saying these are the general behaviors we expect. Those get posted and publicized everywhere, and they get operationalized for specific settings. So you'll see a sign in a hallway, for example, that might say, respectful behavior in the hallway means walking, means this is a touch-free zone, means indoor voices. All right? So rather than saying what not to do, we're telling kids what we do want them to do. And we train staff to be giving acknowledgement to the kids who are doing the right thing. Okay, this is shifting the lens that we look at student behavior through. Because in traditional school settings, and again, in a homogeneous setting, you can get away without doing this. But in Worcester, they tell us approximately 100 different languages are spoken in the homes of our students. So we haven't got homogeneity. We have terrific diversity, which really brings a lot of richness to our district, but also brings some challenges in terms of how do we teach social emotional learning. We can't assume that kids are coming in with common norms for how to behave in their community or in their home. So we're going to teach school expected behavior here, because we have to have a level playing field and we have to have an expectation that's reasonable. And we can't assume that kids know how to behave. We have to assume that it's our responsibility to teach them how we want them to behave. So training staff to acknowledge the expected behavior when they see it, to say good job, say I like the way you took turns there, I like the way you held the door. All right, that was good sharing. Thank you for that answer. We really appreciated you raising your hand and participating in that discussion. We also in PBIS help teachers to have cool tools that enable them to directly teach, so that the teacher's getting support, which they aren't coming into the profession with, but they're getting support to learn how to directly teach and prompt the expected behaviors. And we try to get all school staff on board with this, and we try to involve our families as well. Schools may vary a little bit because the culture from school to school may be a little bit different. So allowing that faculty to decide what's the language we want to use to express our expectations to our students. What will be the appropriate way? How would we say this in our school? Okay. Inappropriate behavior. With inappropriate behavior, our first assumption is a skill deficit. If a kid is behaving in a way that is not appropriate, what skill do they need to learn? Instead of assuming as a first assumption that they're emotionally disturbed or that their family is violent and abusive. Sometimes those things are a factor. But let's say that our first responsibility, a lot of those things are things that are beyond our reach to address immediately. What we can address immediately is the teaching of the expected behavior. Let's see if we address this as a skill deficit. Is it possible that this child will make progress? And we may have to try teaching that skill in a number of different ways. And I already mentioned acknowledging appropriate behaviors. Identifying needs and teaching the missing skills to address those needs. So I said this already. Social norming campaign, 3 to 5 general expectations, all staff emphasizing the same priorities. This is huge. This may not look huge to you if you're not in schools, but to be clear and consistent and working in as many different schools from preschool through high school as I have over so many years, let me tell you, we can think as adults that we're all enforcing the same rules. But when we dig down and we say, okay, when we're working with the secondary staff, say in a middle school, and we say, okay, you all think you know what on time to class means. Let's dig down a little bit. What does on time to class look like for you? And what does it look like for you? And you get these differences that don't sound really big, but they're huge to kids. My kids could come home from school and say, you know, those teachers don't know what they want. They're like all over the place. You know, I got, this one has this rule, okay? But kids who don't have that ability, don't have the self-regulation, or don't have a pretty predictable, structured home life are more likely to do something like tip over the desk or yell out inappropriately or stomp out of the classroom, because they go from one classroom to the next, and it feels like the rules are changed. I know from having evaluated many kids over the years that this is a really significant issue that prompts kids to really have difficulty negotiating school successfully. So clear and consistent in all settings by all staff. We use data. We train staff in the use of, we train school staffs to use a disciplined data collection system so that they're looking at where and when are our problem behaviors occurring. What should we do about that? Is the issue with the kids, or is the issue with the situation? Is the issue with the lack of staff supervision? Is it an issue of we're not handling this transition as well as we might? Is it a matter of we should have recess before lunch instead of recess after lunch? A lot of our schools are experimenting with that and finding differences. And we try to match the resources available to student needs. For kids who are bubbling up in the data with more frequency, who may need some targeted group supports to address their needs, we help schools to develop ways to do that efficiently and effectively. They don't have to dream up a new invention every time they're dealing with a kid who has repeated behavioral infractions. They have a menu. They have sort of a repertoire of different sorts of interventions they can put into place quickly and effectively that help a child to do better. Intensive needs require intensive supports. When you put this sort of efficient system into place, you can end up harvesting time to do the more expensive kinds of interventions with kids with truly complex needs and often serious family issues. This is our PBIS continuum, and it really mirrors the way we're trying to address bullying, with a common set of behavior expectations that apply to all kids in the school. And what the research shows, and a lot of you will recognize this as very much the public health triangle, you'll have 80% of students most of the time able to function in school successfully with one or fewer discipline referrals in a year. You'll have a smaller group of students who bubble up into that yellow range. They need a little bit more. They may need some targeted specialized supports. We use things called like Check and Connect quite a lot. Sharon's going to tell you more about that. And a very small number of students, often students with significant mental health issues or severe chronic behavior problems, will be at that need of intensive level. But because we're dealing with that 80% much more efficiently and effectively, and we're using group interventions for other kids, we've bought the time we need to do that more intensive intervention at the top of the triangle. This is an example of the sort of one of the tools that is available to us in schools. You can get this off the U.S. Department of Education website if you just Google bullying behavior chart USDOE. It gives us, I don't know if you can, yeah, you probably can see that. That's pretty big. But it gives you level 1 type bullying behaviors, level 2 type bullying behaviors, level 3. It's a rubric that helps us to basically categorize different types of behavior and think of them within a framework about, is this a low level sort of problem behavior, higher? Notice level 2, some of these behaviors are against the law. Level 3, most of these behaviors are against the law, okay? So again, it gives you this continuum for thinking about the problem behaviors of kids and how to address it. I've also just pulled up several different websites. I don't know if this is going to be sent out to folks who have an interest or what your plan is, but there's a lot on the web, and some of these are government websites. The third bullet there, the pbis.org website, has a whole packaged manual that can be downloaded at no charge on bullying prevention in PBIS schools. Useful for those of you who may be in schools, even if you want to use segments of it to enhance what you're doing to prevent bullying. The social emotional learning site, CASEL, there has a lot of good resources. That last one is from the Mass government about their bullying report there. So I'm going to end now because I'm sorry I went over time a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Judith. Our final speaker before we get to question and answers is Sharon Rogan. Sharon has been a teacher in the Worcester Public Schools for 26 years, and she's been working with children with behavioral challenges in a variety of settings. Her current role is a behavior specialist at Elm Park Community School in Worcester, where she teaches a bullying prevention program called Steps to Respect to students in grades 4, 5, and 6. She facilitates a violence prevention program called Second Step for grades preschool through grade 6, and is the internal coach for the Positive Behavioral Intervention Support Program that Judith just spoke about. Sharon earned her bachelor's degree in special education from Westfield State College, a master's in special education from Assumption College, and this summer finished her CAGS in special education with a concentration in the PBIS program. So without further ado, Sharon Rogan.
He's got to come switch my PowerPoint.
Okay, so he's usually doing this. That's okay. Nope. Oops, where is he? He left me. He left me. Oh, I'm going this too far. I don't know what to do. Ah, no, it's because he left. It's supposed to go back or forward. This isn't yours, right? This is hers.
Oh, she just,
What?
you're down to Logan, right?
If it's not, where's it? It was on the bottom. Oh, well. Modern technology, it's great when it works. Is anybody good at this? I lost my friend. Nope. What? Oh, the other person. I can't do anything about it now. No?
You guys figure that out. I'll get started.
Okay. What to do?
And I have a big mouth. Can you hear me back there if I don't, while they're working on that? Okay. That's how they figured that out. I'm going to start my presentation with a little exercise that I do with my kids at school through the program that I teach on bullying prevention. And I want you to give me a thumbs up if you think it's bullying, and I want you to give me a thumbs down if you think it's a conflict. Okay? So I'm going to give you a few scenarios. Last year, you and a friend worked together on a science fair project. You wanted to work with that friend again this year, but he just told you that he is working with somebody else. You are very upset and ignore your friend for the rest of the day. Do you think that's a bullying situation, or do you think it's a conflict? Okay, I'm done. You got my friend.
They know.
Okay.
This one, right?
Vanilla. At recess, you try to join a kickball game. One player says, "You can't play with us. You're too tall, and it's not fair if you play. Go play with kids your own size." Bullying or not bullying? Come on, hesitation. Hesitation here. Oh, love that. Some say yes, some say no. I'm gonna tell you this right. It's bullying. And into my presentation. Oh, yeah. Okay. Now, what button am I pushing? I'm just using the down arrow, correct?
You know what? Here, oh, this.
No, I don't want to use that.
Okay,
I don't want to use that. I'll do it this way. Okay. That's bullying. You shouldn't be laughing. Should not be laughing at that. Very sad. Good thing you're here. Okay. I'm not great with technology. I'm usually used to doing my overheads and my handouts and whatnot, so forgive me, because I'm not great at this. My daughter's better. Okay. Next one. 5 days in a row, Eric receives an email message that says, "You're a pig. You're a big flat slob. Everybody hates you." Bullying or conflict? Oh, yeah. That's bullying. Someone whispers to you, "Don't let that new kid sit with us at lunch." Bullying or not bullying? Bullying. Awesome. And the last one. You're running for home base in a softball game. You think you're safe. The catcher says you're out. You call the catcher a big cheater. He makes a mean gesture in your face. Oh, you're good. You're good. Most people would say that's bullying. It is a conflict. That is a conflict, yes. Okay, so this is what we're teaching my kids at my school through our particular program. We are teaching them that bullying is unfair and one-sided. And we review the definition of what unfair is and what one-sided is. And the kids pretty much know one-sided is probably the toughest part to remember. All kids know unfair means not equal. When you get into one-sided, basically what the kids are saying is that somebody might be targeting you, the aggressor is targeting you, but the target is not returning the favor of bullying. They're not returning the bullying. So if the aggressor is the only one doing the bullying, then it is one-sided. We also point out in the definition, this is the one definition that we use at my school. It happens when someone keeps hurting, frightening, threatening, or leaving somebody out on purpose. And we focus on the keeps word because it's repetitious. It happens more often. It happens more than once. And on purpose refers to the intent to harm. We have a couple of, oh, they're leaving me. We have a couple of different ways that we identify bullying. We have face-to-face bullying and we have behind-the-back bullying. Some examples of face-to-face would be name-calling, pushing, kicking. Face-to-face, both parties are there. The aggressor is there and the target is also there. So you know that's face-to-face bullying. Behind-the-back bullying, our examples would be name-calling, gossiping, spreading rumors, passing notes, and social exclusion. Now, one of the incidents that I gave you at the beginning talked about an email message, and the kids at school really have a hard time identifying whether or not that's a face-to-face incident or if it's behind the back. With a thumbs up, would you say face-to-face thumbs up, or would you say behind the back? It is face-to-face bullying because both people are not physically there, but the other person is receiving the message directly. Okay, so they are hearing it. So it is an example of face-to-face bullying. We also go through the 3 R's. Recognize, pretty much they need to know what the definition is of bullying. Bullying is unfair and one-sided. It happens when somebody keeps hurting, frightening, threatening, or leaving somebody out on purpose. So once they recognize it, then they need to decide, is this a conflict or is it bullying? What do I need to do? And we ask the kids to ask yourself some questions. You can say, is it fair? How do people feel about that? Is it unsafe? If they can answer questions, so is it fair? No. Is it unsafe? Yes. How are people feeling? Making me feel uncomfortable? Pretty much, it's probably bullying. So once you have recognized that it is a bullying situation, you have 2 options. You can refuse the bullying. That's if you feel safe to refuse the bullying. And when we teach the refusing the bullying, we talk about being assertive. Do you feel comfortable? Are there adults around you that can help you if you are refusing the bullying? When we say refuse, we are assertive by standing tall, looking at the people in the eye, the aggressor in the eye, and saying, that's bullying, and I need you to stop, and walk away. The kids feel safe enough to do that, they can do that. However, if they're feeling that they're not safe, maybe there aren't any adults around, maybe it's just one-on-one, maybe the person, the aggressor, is bigger than they are, as we talked about power. If you don't feel safe, then you report. The students know that they can go to any adult in the building to report any incident of bullying. If they feel that they do not get the result that they want, they can go and report it to somebody else. The kids know that. I have many options to come and report the bullying because nobody will be unsafe at my school. So they have many options. So they can refuse or report, or they can refuse the bullying, and if that doesn't work, then they can report it. So I have a couple of case studies for you just to kind of make it real for you. Where I'm at, I have a preschool through grade 6 school that I'm teaching at currently. There was an incident this year. Because we have this bullying program doesn't necessarily mean that we're bully free at our school. We are working on it. We've made a lot of progress. We have a 7-year-old student, W, and he is the aggressor. And a 7-year-old. Great. Okay. Wow. Wow. Okay, so go by my notes. Oh, it's not on this. It's only up there now. I don't know how to get it back. It's not on this. It's only showing up there. Okay. Anyway, so we have W, who's the aggressor, and we have E, who is the target. And my W, my little W boy, he's very small, cute as a button, personality plus, comes into school with his rosary beads around him because he's, he's an angel. Well, he's outside at recess at the playground, and he gets a couple of his buddies, and, they go over to his target, the E, and they start all of a sudden, out of the blue, just kind of hitting him. And W was telling his friends, kick them, punch him. And there are people on duty out there. They saw this, they broke it up. E goes home and reports this to his family. Parents come in. Here's my savior. Parents come in, and they want to know what happened. So now that we know of this bullying situation is pretty severe, there need to be consequences. So, I'm distracted. Thank you. How will it go? Oh, thank you. Okay. So the reported. Once a bullying situation is reported to the staff, what we need to do as a staff now is that we call the aggressor's parents to let them know that there is an incident at school and this is what had happened. And we also call the target's parents as well to let them know what's happening. And then I do a conflict resolution. That's part of my role at my school, where all the parties involved sit at a table. I have a process that I go through, and we decide exactly what happened. Consequences were given. W was suspended from school because he really couldn't tell me why he chose E. He just said, no, shrugged his shoulders. But he was looking pretty good in front of his pals, and his pals were listening. The pals had a consequence as well. They had what we call an in-house suspension, kind of. But they worked with me, and we went through the scenario again. So that's one case study. Yes?
Why didn't the adults who broke up the event initially report it?
They did report it, but it didn't sound as severe as what had happened. What the kids reported was not as severe. The parents, this little boy, E, was very shy, very intimidated, and at school felt, I'm afraid to say anything. They reported to the parents came to us, and we handled it from there. You're welcome. Okay, second case study, we have a 12-year-old Z. He is the target, and the aggressors, more than one aggressor, it's various classmates. The behavior happens in the classroom, it happens at recess, lunch, during the computer lab, and he's being teased relentlessly because of his feminine manner. Z is very different from the last case study. He's very verbal, and he felt very comfortable coming to report what was going on to teachers. He has many people that he's gone to, and he felt comfortable enough to say, this is what's going on. And we were able to have a conflict resolution with the parties involved. And what I was able to do during this conflict resolution was I was kind of turn the table a little bit on the kids who were the aggressors. Hey, can you help me out? Can you keep an eye on Z for me? It seems that other kids were coming around and teasing him. Now I'm putting them in the role of being in control to help out this student Z. So you can see there are a couple of different instances of how bullying is reported. I'm going to briefly go over PBIS. Judy went over it in detail. I'm just going to kind of show you what it really looks like in a school. We have the 3 levels, as you saw the triangles that Judy had up on her screen. We have the universal level, that green level, that 80%. During that level, it focuses on reducing new cases of problem behavior or academic failure. Our targeted level focuses on reducing current cases of problem behavior or academic failure. And one way that we do that is through behavioral contracting, a check and connect, as Judy had mentioned. Our particular program is called HUG, which is through PBIS, which is hello, update, and goodbye. Students take goals from our grid, and we talk about what they're having the most difficulty with. It might be, I need to raise my hand and wait to be called on. I might need to work on keeping my hands, feet, and objects to myself. It might be I need to complete my classwork on time. And they earn greens or they earn 2s for each goal throughout the day. So that's our targeted level, just real brief. Our intensive level focuses on reducing complications, intensity, and severity of students with chronic problem behavior or academic failure. And that's where our wraparound services come in as well. Briefly, when we teach PBIS, we clarify, we define, we instruct, we practice, we model, and reinforce. Just like when we teach academics, we do the same thing when we're teaching social skills. As Judy had mentioned before, it might be hallway expectations we might be teaching in our classroom. The teachers actually bring the kids out to the hallway and they practice. What does it look like? My hands are down by my sides. I'm facing forward. I have a silent wave as I walk down the hallway. I pass the door to the person behind me. We're teaching it, we're modeling it, we're rewarding the kids for doing that. Research is demonstrating that schools make greater academic gains when they simultaneously build a school-wide positive social culture. We have had this culture in our school for maybe 6 years now, and you can walk in and you can feel the atmosphere. Any stranger would come into our building and they would know kids are positive. They know they're getting rewarded for doing the right thing, not just academically, but also socially. So here's an example of our matrix at my particular school. Judy had mentioned be responsible, be respectful, be ready. Ours are, we have a caring attitude with respect and enthusiasm. So the areas that we look at for caring for all of these areas would be in the classrooms, in the hallways, sidewalks, and dismissal, in the cafeteria, in the bathroom, and on the playground. Expectations are posted throughout the school and in the classrooms as well. And here are some examples of some of the expectations that the kids might see and what they are taught. Expectations: keep my hands, feet, and objects to myself. What area? All the areas. Allow others to learn and listen. We do that in the classroom. Complete homework and classwork on time in the classroom. Using kind words, all areas of the building. And walking facing forward, you would see in the hallways, sidewalks, and dismissal. A few more, stay to the right. Obviously, you see that in the hallways. Quiet conversation in the cafeteria. The kids are taught, you can't talk to the person in front of you. You can talk to the person on either side of you, but you may not shout across to the other tables. They're taught who they can talk to. Put all trash in the trash barrel. In the bathroom, we teach expectations in the bathroom. Use 2 squirts of soap. That's what we expect you to do. Always knock on the stall doors before you enter. We're teaching these expectations. And again, on the playground area, some simple examples: playing safe, play fair, ask others to join in, agree on the rules of the game. And my big one, when the bell rings, line up, hands up, single file. A lot of times the kids think you can still play when the bell rings. So those are just a few examples of what PBIS looks like in a school, and an example of a kind of a program that we teach to help with bullying as well. So did I do it in time? Nice. Okay.
Thank you to all our speakers. And now we'll have a time for questions. So if you want to just come up, and I'm not going to try and turn on the lights because I might end up turning them off. So questions? Yes. Do you want to speak up or do you want me to run up with a?
I get a lot, boy.
Okay, I'll repeat it.
That everybody has to go through, especially in the school. That's all geared towards elementary, in the playground, and proper manners, and walking in the hallway. We have a lot of problems in the high school. My daughter has a lot of problems in the high school. How do you deal with that? If you go to a counselor, it ends up escalating to the person, oh, you can't fight your own battles, you gotta bring this one into it. You can't do peer mediation because it's like, oh, you tattle, blah, blah, blah. Can't, it doesn't work in the high school. So everything that you said is like useless to the high school level, in my
Could you
opinion.
just repeat the question a little bit, just?
Okay, the comment is that a lot of the information we're presenting is relevant to elementary schools. We also use the same strategies in middle schools with good effect, but useless in the high school. You don't think it applies in the high school. I would say we had limited time here tonight, but we do developmental adaptations to different age levels. And while we don't have that sort of school-wide PBIS type of intervention in any of our comprehensive high schools yet, we do have it in some of our alternative settings that are secondary, grades 7 through 12, with some good impact. But we have to modify it to be appropriate to the age level. I would say that our bullying intervention is consistent across all grade levels, so that the mandate to be teaching pro-social skills, our health educators are using a research-based curriculum in the health classes with the high school. We still have the reporting and investigation and staff training, certainly just making all staff aware that there's a mandate so that, you know, people can't say anymore. Under this new bullying law, as school personnel, we're obligated, if we see something happening, and everybody's been trained, including custodians, including the cafeteria people, as well as all staff, that if we see something that looks like bullying, you know, we intervene to break it up and we report it. There's a mandate to report if you see things like this or if a kid reports this to anybody. So, and then the interventions are individualized depending on the circumstances. In some cases, we're developing safety support plans that are very specific to the needs of the student. There are often disciplinary consequences to the aggressors in those situations, and sometimes safety support plans for the aggressor as well, who may require additional supervision across different settings. But you know, it is implemented. We had limited time here tonight, so we didn't go into the secondary applications of that, but we still have the same obligation.
Other questions? Yes.
Is it, I can't use the word impossible, but is it possible that when a victim of bullying is bullied, that they retaliate? What happens when you have a situation like that? Instead of them going for fear of, and a lot of times it's not fear of safety at that given moment, but sometimes I think, because we work with young people too, our organization works with same type of thing, high school age, and a lot of times what happens is they don't want to go and report it because of the same type of issue, you know, they call it this, that. My question is, what happens when the victim takes it upon themselves to retaliate against that type of
I'm gonna have Judy answer this, but I just want, with the elementary level, that is a strong issue with us with the retaliation. Kids don't want to report because they're gonna be called, oh, you know, you're a, what's the word? You're a snitch. And we go through all that. We go through exactly what the difference is between tattling and reporting. Reporting is when somebody is unsafe. Yes, you have to report it. You are part of this environment. You are part of our school. It is your job to report anybody that you see that is unsafe. Tattling and snitching is you just want somebody to get in trouble. You know, so we go through the difference with that at the elementary level. But we also tell kids if they are fearing coming to report any kind of bullying, I talked about this today with sexual bullying with our 6th graders, is that write it down. You can write it down and you can somehow, we will see what the situation is and find a way around of handling that. But do you want to address the high school?
Yeah, I think that any situation that comes to our attention gets investigated. There's a mandatory investigative forms that we've developed for the use of administrators to do their fact-finding around exactly what happened here. And when you find, like, sometimes that second kid is the one who gets disciplined. I know from years in high school, sometimes the kid who throws the first punch gets away with it. The kid who retaliates is the one who gets nailed. And so a similar sort of thing can happen with bullying. But I think if we are thorough in our fact finding, and if we're talking to kids about what was the motivation behind this, sometimes you do unearth something that's been a long-standing pattern. I think in the first example that Sharon used, people said, why didn't the adults who saw that do something? Well, it might not have been apparent that there was a pattern there. And again, it's bullying when it's repeated. So we may see something and think it's the first time it's happened. And then as you do your investigation, you find out, whoa, this has been going on for months and nobody told us. Well, that puts a whole different interpretation on the events. So I think we tried to tailor the intervention or the response to the circumstances.
Yes?
That was one of my questions as far as you said, something's been going on for a long time and no one told us. How does that work? Do the teachers cooperate, or do they feel like they're overburdened already, with state budget cuts and everything, that it's just another job that they have to do? Is it a team?
Just repeat the question.
Yeah, so your question is, are the teachers overwhelmed in having to deal with these bullying situations? What's helped a lot in my experience is the implementation of PBIS, because it's a culture of the school, and the kids feel safe. The kids are being rewarded for doing the right thing so consistently that the negative behaviors aren't happening. The teachers, it's ingrained in their curriculum. It's ingrained in what they do every single day. So in my experience, I don't see my teachers getting overwhelmed with that, because they know we have a system, we have a routine on how things are ordered. This happens, you report it, they write an incident report, an office discipline referral, whatever it might be, and they know that they can come to me if they have any issues. They handle it within their classroom if they can. If it's too much, then it's sent to the office. We have expectations for teachers that have to handle certain behaviors in the classroom, and they know that there are ways that they can handle it. And then there are also behaviors that they know can be referred to the office, so they know it's out of their hands. So immediately they would write an office discipline referral, and it would be dealt with elsewhere. So I think when you have a system in place, it's easier for teachers not to be overwhelmed.
One other question. How do they monitor, like, bathroom areas and areas that are out of the way when you have teachers doing different things? Do you have enough staff to do that?
Well, no, we never have enough staff for anything, really. Everybody wants more staff. With budget cuts this year, it's been horrible. But again, teaching the expectations of bathroom behavior and kids getting rewarded for doing the right thing. Oh, the bathroom's clean. We have sign-in and sign-out books. Those kids were in the bathroom at that time. You're going to get a clock card, or you're going to get a sticker for, keeping the bathroom clean. There are always ways to reward. We want to reward positive behavior, so those negativities don't occur.
Caroline?
Yes. Actually, can I just add something to that too? What Sharon says is very important, but it's also important to implement congruently in the home too, so that it gets reinforced in the house as well.
Caroline?
Hi, 3 questions. One is, who did the training for the schools in Pasadena, and how long was the training?
Could you make sure you repeat the question?
Yes, the question was, who did the training and were all the teachers trained? The training was done by a group of us who put together most of our plan that we had to submit to the state by last December. And so the school safety liaison, along with the department head of health education, who supervises the health educators who are delivering the research-based curriculum that we use, mostly Second Step and Steps to Respect. And on the secondary level, we have a curriculum called Victims, Aggressors, and Bystanders. So those are the research-based curricula that we're using across our district. So the safety liaison, the department head of health education, myself, because the staff that I'm responsible for have a lot of input to the development of intervention plans to reteach skills or to develop behavior support plans for kids who might need a very specific type of plan in place to help them learn appropriate behaviors and unlearn negative behaviors. And the person who's in charge of staff development for the district was also on that group, and the manager of community relations and I forget what his title is, but he's a guy who's like a first responder to parent complaints that come to the district centrally. Does that answer your question? Well, that's a longer process. If a school wants to take on positive behavior interventions and supports, it usually is a matter of, usually we do 3 days of training with staff consecutively. That usually has to happen in the summer. And then usually 2 days together spread out over the following year. Because it takes a lot of work up front, but most of the schools that implement with some fidelity find that it's definitely worth it, and they end up saving time. And it's just, they would much rather spend their time telling kids when they're doing the right thing instead of correcting them or telling them to knock it off when they're doing the wrong thing.
Yes, I have a question for the doctor, please. You spoke very briefly about physical manifestations of bullying. Can you give us some more examples of what we can look for, especially in very young children who maybe don't have a voice, or what we can
Yes.
look for physically?
Sure. So the question was to look for symptoms in younger kids, like maybe 6 and below?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Well, they can actually have problems with sleep. They can have nightmares from the teasing, chronic, deliberate teasing. They can also, start behaving abnormally in the sense that if they were a quiet child, we're able to be obedient, we're able to follow rules, they might start becoming disobedient and aggressive at home. So, alterations in behavior that are not like your child that you're used to could be a sign. They can also have issues with appetite as well. They can stop eating, especially if they're, a little bit overweight and they're being teased by their weight. Kids as young as 6, 5, they can get teased with that kind of stuff. The other thing too is that they can start feeling sick. So, they start, as I said before too, the cold symptoms are very important because, one of the things is that these kids start feeling depressed, and kids, because they can't say I'm depressed or sad, it starts spilling out in their physical, well-being. So they start, they start being more vulnerable to colds. So you find that you're taking them to the doctors more often. They start missing more school because, they have the sniffles, or, they learn, oh my gosh, I said I have a headache, and they might learn what a headache is at that young age. Oh my gosh, my belly hurts. They might get nauseous. They might get so anxious that they get nauseous, and they might be throwing up. We actually had a case like that, a 7-year-old actually, who was up in our pediatric floor, who just had, chronic runs, and we couldn't figure out why. And it turns out that after a while, talking to the parent, talking to the child as best as we could, behaviors had changed at home. They became more withdrawn. This kid was very social, loved to play, in the sandbox and things like that. Loved to do things with friends, and they stopped doing that. So it turns out that the chronic runs weren't really anything like organically wrong with the child, but really it was the emotional stress that was spilling over to the physical symptoms.
Yes.
This is a question for Sharon and Julia. I had implemented the second step program at the middle school level a few years back and got really incredibly positive response from the students. But from the information I've been given, it's not an approved program from the Department of Education, elementary, secondary.
It is.
Yeah.
Did everybody hear the question?
Yeah, at the middle school level. I'm hoping you're going to tell me that I got the wrong information.
Well, I would have to look that up to be certain of at which levels is it approved. But I believe it's on the list of approved programs from the Department of Elementary and Secondary. We were already using it, so this was a no-brainer for us because we already thought those were good programs, the ones that come out of Committee for Children, Second Step and Steps to Respect. So it was a matter of just expanding that and making sure we were delivering it across the board. But I believe it's right. I mean, now I'm going to be looking that up.
Yes?
Would it be considered bullying if every time a student would have another student, they would have snickering comment, or if the student being harassed made a statement and the other one would mimic and make fun of it in a funny voice, like, child, is that considered harassment when it's done every day, when you walk through the hallways of school? Or is the student being harassed being suspended?
The question is, if somebody's snickering at somebody or mimicking the way they talk in a funny voice or something like this on a daily basis, is that bullying or not? I would say that's bullying, and I would think it qualifies as harassment too under that law. Absolutely. That has that effect of creating a hostile environment in school, making that person, again, bullying behavior is really defined by the impact that it has. And that could have a huge impact. You know, even the whole idea of social exclusion, you may not be able to see that. You know, it's a more subtle, but I think that part of our challenge with this behavior is that it covers the gamut of overt, visible behaviors to very invisible behaviors, like just ignoring somebody in a way that's painful or hurtful. But certainly mimicking, snickering, yeah, that would be, and it's repeated daily, sure, that would definitely be qualifying.
The second question that I had is, we have a protection of harassment order on someone, and she is doing this constantly, so that is breaking the harassment.
That could be a violation of the harassment prevention order. I would suggest documenting everything, document, detailed. And obviously the school knows there's a harassment prevention order in effect. And so what you want to do is notify the school, but notify the police department. If a judge has issued a harassment prevention order, you don't have to go back in front of that judge. You need someone to enforce it. And you need the school as well as the police. I would make the call to the police department, okay? And document every instant where that order was violated, okay? And I don't know if there's any special conditions that were placed by the judge saying incidental contact in the hallways passing, that's not incidental. That's directly retargeting the person. So.
And she was saying how she would make comment and make fun of her. The judge said that she could have learned to be less sensitive. But as she said, when it happens every single day, whether you're a normal person or you have, you know, issues of being sensitive, it doesn't matter. It's done daily, it's gonna get you.
And you need to go right to an adult in the hallway when that happens too, to go immediately report. But if there's been instances, as you're describing, that's a violation of the order, police, let the police know, and the school as well, which they obviously.
One last question, go ahead.
We're talking about student rights and 200 order, where I feel a lot of students don't know that they have that this is in place. I know about student rights, but I had no idea about 200 order, and I was wondering if this is something students should be told about, that they have these rights, that they have all of this, that they have these sorts of protections, how they should be informed about it.
Well,
Repeat the question.